Good afternoon, everybody. This is KJ, and this is Catching Up with KJ, episode number 75. And it's a real special one for me. This is long overdue, this one. We're going to get to chat with someone who's very, very interesting, someone I've followed for a long time. Also, he's heavily requested by you guys. It seems like pretty much every catching up show I've done, I have people saying, hey, you should really talk with Gons from Face Like the Sun. He's also the host of Canary Cry Radio. So if you're not familiar with Face Like the Sun YouTube channel, please get over there and check it out ASAP. Um, we cover some similar subjects, but just like most of us out here, we all have our own niche and our own thing. And I really like his perspective. It's Gons is his name. It's the nickname, but Gons. And I'm very excited to have him here today. So I just left a link for him, and let's see if he's going to be able to pop on in a second. Enter the stars, man. Good to see you, Symbol Seeker. Got a lot of people here, man. Mods, Effie's here. Thank you, Timmy. What a pleasure. I hope you're doing okay out there. I know you're overseas right now. At least last we talked, you were. So let's see here. Let's try something. Okay, Gons is having some trouble with it. Let me try one more time, Gons, and see if this helps. I'll put it in one more time. I'm chatting with him on Skype now, and I'm trying to get him the link so he can get in here. And there's usually some kind of technical tomfoolery going on whenever I do a show. So hopefully we can get beyond it and see what happens here. So we're waiting on Guns, and he's wanting to come on in. Let's see. Let me write something else. Try that. And I'm still writing something here to him. Try this. We're still chatting back and forth here a little bit. Yeah, sometimes on Skype, it'll look like we're online, but we're actually offline. It's kind of a weird thing. If you go up there to the Skype in the top left corner, check your online status, and that might help. So we'll see if that does it. He's trying to come in. So let's see here if that helps him. And if not, if for some reason we can't get him on, worst case scenario, we'll just chat today. There's a lot of news to cover anyway. There's a lot of things happening out there. I actually got to meet a friend of mine from YouTube last night. They actually came through town, and that was really nice. And they actually live in Florida, so they're kind of concerned about what's happening out there with Irma, I guess is the name of it, they're calling it. So let's see what happens with that. So it looks like he's writing back. Let's see what happens. Thanks for your patience, by the way. Let me tell him this, see if he can check this. Check the Skype link. Top left. Do this. Again, thanks for your patience, guys. Fly by the seat of our pants here. This is what we always do. And let's see what happens. This has happened before too. If you can hear me, Guns, this has happened before. Like I said, Skype can be a little bit confusing. I've had trouble with this in the past. Because even your like your name on the side there, it should be lit up green, but it's not. So that just means that you're, according to Skype, offline, which is really weird. But that's how this thing works sometimes. So if you check that online status and just make sure that you're actually on, and that should do it. We'll see. See if that helps. And I'm gonna wait. We'll give it like another minute or so and see if we can't figure this out with Gons and here, man. It's been a long time coming. And again, I know a lot of you guys have been wanting to chat with him. It says we can't do the call on Skype. I guess we could. I've never done. I'm not sure how that. Oh, like I could just call you. I guess I could just call you. Yeah. So if you want to try it that way, we can do that too. Let me just see if you can give me your number. If that works better, that's fine, and we'll give that a shot. Like I can call you from Skype, and we'll see if that works. That should work. I think. Excuse me. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure the people will be able to hear us too. And that's why usually I do it this way, you know. But yeah, if you check that top, we're writing to each other right now. Thanks again for hanging with me, guys. It's going to take just a little bit. We're going to try something different here. Hmm. Let me try to write this to him. Look at the Skype button. Top left. Click. And let me see. And go to status. And let's see if that helps. Online status. Okay, cool. Try this link. Let's see if this works. Let's see if you can jump in here. Thanks again for waiting, guys. We're trying to get this thing set up. Like I said, it's been a common issue I've had in the past trying to bring people on. See, I'll say this to him. Page. So we're still kind of going back and forth here. I know this is exciting for you people. I do appreciate your patience. Huh. Well, he's having trouble with it, I guess. Um, Try this. See if I can maybe just call him from Skype. But on my end, it's still showing he's offline, but he's on his end, it's telling him it's online. So I'm not sure. So we'll see here. And I really think it's just this weird little Skype issue. You'll have your window open and you'll think you're online, but you won't be. You know what I mean? So hang with me, guys, just a little bit here. Let's see if we can't get this figured out. If not, we'll just kind of chat about some stuff. And we'll just do that. But I would rather talk to Gons. I'd much rather just chat with Gons here. Let me write this to him here. Let's see here. Let's see what happens here. Weird. Well, I'll tell you what. See, I don't want to. I guess, okay, here's what I'll do. I'm going to log out of Skype for a second. Then I'll come back and we'll see if that helps. So hang tight with me, guys. I'm going to log out of Skype. And then we'll try that again. It's just to make sure it's not something from my end here. Come back on. So just give me a few more seconds here. It's coming up. Excuse me. It's online. My end is saying he's offline. So we'll try this and see if this works. And once we get him on here, I'll leave a message below once this show's uploaded so that people can bypass like the first few minutes here while we're trying to get him on and let you know exactly when we started. So hang tight. My Skype's coming up slowly but surely. And then we'll try it one more time. Okay, there we go. So now I'm back. Okay, now Gons. Now I'm seeing that you're back on. Now it shows you're online. So let's do this. Just from my end, I don't know. This kind of stuff happens. So hang tight. Always some kinds of little shenanigans going on here with these shows. Do that. Click on that. All right, now let's try this. See what happens. I sent them a link again. Now on my end, it's saying it's trying to update Skype. So who knows, maybe that's a part of it, but see if anything's happening here. Sent them the link again. See that? My Skype updating. Thanks for your patience. We'll figure this out. Of course, Skype has to update now. I write in the middle of a live show, in the beginning of a live show. But maybe this will clear up the issue. We'll see. I'm not sure if he's tried that link again or not, but anything. I'm going to take a drink of coffee myself. Hang in there with us, guys. Like I said, if for whatever reason we can't get Gons on here, we'll chat today. There's a lot of stuff to chat about. You can bring up any subjects you want to in the chat box, and we'll just kind of go from there. Just have a show, you know. Pointed, I really do want to get Gons on here. So if you're listening, Gons, somehow, thanks again for your patience. Now there's my Skype. Apparently it's been updated. Now let's see if anything changes. So we're back. And let's go here. It says, can you live stream on Skype from your end? Yeah. Um, I'm live now. So let's try this again. See if we can't do that. Do that. And yes, I'm live now through Skype. Still waiting. Oh, well, yeah, that's what happens. You get an invite. Here we go. So maybe that'll do it. I forget sometimes that just getting a green quote, he says. So he's getting the invite to join the call. Hmm. And I don't know. Wait, let me see. Epic says something. Yeah, Epic, I did. I gave him the link to the Hangout. That's what I always do is I send them the link straight to the Hangout, and then they get the request, and then they usually just have to press yes. Let's see. Hmm. So I just don't know. Let me see. I mean, I don't know if I can just call him. Let me see. Google Chrome as your web browser. That's a good idea, Epic. Thanks. Might be it. Let's see. I think that's actually probably going to be it. Oh. Well, let me ask him if he wants this. See if that does anything. I'm still waiting on a response here. Yeah, otherwise I'm just not sure what the deal is. Sorry, guys. We're trying. We're trying to get him on here. Let me see what happens if I press this. There we go.
Yes.
There he is.
All right, hold on. Let me.
Oh, good. I'm so glad we got it, man.
I'm gonna change settings here.
That's nice.
I think.
Do what you got to do, man. The
Oh
people
no,
are...
I can't. Okay, now I can't hear you. Hold on one sec.
We're getting there, folks. Thanks for your thanks for your patience.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now I can't hear you. What's going on? This is so confusing.
I'm sorry, man.
I see your signal, but I can't hear you. All right, hold on.
Sure.
Let's see.
It's all right. Well, I'll chat with you over here on the sideboard.
That's...
You know.
Is that working? Hold on. Let me see if it's working. Okay.
Me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but I don't know if it's... Let me see.
Yeah. For the people in chat, thanks again, guys, for your patience. We finally got there. That's a good thing. I knew we would. I've had some of these issues in the past, too. So it's just... Hangouts can be kind of weird, and if you're not on the right browser, and if you're not set up right on Skype, and all this other stuff, it's just, you know, it's a lot more complicated than it should be sometimes.
Okay. I guess part of it also is my fault because I'm trying to do a live stream, which I probably shouldn't have tried to do the first time around.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's usually just, you know, you click the Hangout link and it should come in, but it's whatever. I imagine there's, you know, and then there was on my end, it was weird because you were online and Skype was saying you're offline. So once I restarted my Skype, it came through good, you know, so.
Yeah, that's weird.
The enemy doesn't want us to talk, perhaps.
Yeah, you know? Seriously. At the very least.
At the very least. Or it's some hipster neckbeard at YouTube is messing with us. You never know.
Yeah, that's always possible.
For sure.
Are you getting all those manual reviews for all your videos now?
Yeah, and actually, now that we have you on, I just want to say thanks again for coming on to the audience. Thanks, guys, so much for your patience. It's worth it. Gons is an amazing researcher, a great guy, a real warrior out there, been around for a long time. And as I said in the beginning of the show, if you're not familiar with him, please check out FaceLikeTheSun YouTube and also Canary Cry Radio, which he hosts. And yes, man, I mean, this whole YouTube thing is out of control. And you know, maybe you've had this problem in the past too, but for about the last year or so, they were running this kind of game on my channel anyway, you know, where you'll upload a video and it gets like, you know, oh, and if you don't mind, you maybe turn down the volume in the background if it's okay, Gons. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Thanks, man. But yeah, you know, like where you'll upload a video, and even back then I had over 200,000 subs, but you'd get like 3,000 views in 24 hours. You know, I knew something was wrong, you know?
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out the feedback thing now because
that's okay.
I don't hear any feedback on my end, so I don't know if it's like something.
Do you have the window open with the chat?
Yeah.
That's what it is. If you can make sure the volume on that's down, we'll be fine.
Okay. Is there a volume on? Let's see. I've never really used this thing before.
That's okay, and I get it. Like I said, I've had the same issue with some other people in the past that just don't do a lot of these types of hangouts, you know?
Yeah, I guess it's just the hangout. I've done live stream plenty of times, but for some reason this is different. Okay, is there supposed to be a is this it? No, that's just the
regular volume button there. And that's it. I don't hear it anymore, so you must have got it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we've been seeing that forever. Like there's certain videos that just right off the bat, you know, they get demonetized or like some kind of weird company or somebody will like try to take it down or claim copyright on it, and you know, it kind of sucks, but that's just what it is. And I think we got to just keep in mind that it's the message that's important, really. You know, it's not necessarily the monetizing part. Although, you know, it does kind of suck when you put all your hard work into making a video and somebody else makes money off of it for, or tries to make money off of it for like, I don't know, 30 seconds, maybe a couple minutes of a clip in your 30-minute video, you know? So,
Exactly. And YouTube's going to make money off your videos anyway. Even if you don't monetize, they say it clearly that they have the right to put ads on your videos anyway. So a lot of times they're going to do that, you know? So
yeah.
and I've always been a proponent for it. I mean, like you, I never started off doing this for money. It wasn't about money. It's always been a passion of mine. But then once I became a partner, they offered that to me. It was great. I was like, sure, why not make a few dollars on top of something you're doing that you love? And it never changed my message. I always kept it the same. And, you know, I was really blessed for years to be able to just kind of live that way, which was really nice. But, you know, then again, the other argument is that we've been riding the beast to expose the beast for a long time. So we shouldn't be surprised when it bites back on us, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing that me too, I started off and I'm like, I'm not going to make any money doing this. I'm just doing it to do it. And really it was more of out of necessity and like my own personal like psychology to try to make sense of what was happening. And just Age of Deceit 1 was just regurgitating like all this info I had consumed, and I had to put it down somewhere or I was going to go crazy. And that was it. That's all it was. And I wanted to share the truth that I discovered through all of it. And that's it, you know? And then it wasn't until people were like, hey, can we get a copy of your, you know, of the film on DVD and all this stuff? There was enough people bothering me about it that I decided to do something about it. So, and then the YouTube partnership thing came along, and I didn't do it for a while because it was like, you know, it's not what really this is about. But, you know, as the views went up, it was like, I might as well. You know.
Yeah, you got a baby too, right? Like you have a child and you got a wife, so you know it
Yeah.
helps. A little extra
Yeah,
money. And I'm
it
glad
helps
you
a
brought
little.
up I'm glad you brought up Age of Deceit, because now that's the first big work you did. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Just
see,
all
that's
independent.
good. Well, that's something you and I share, because I did my first thing when I really woke up, and I was already a Christian before this, but when I really woke up, I made the scariest movie ever made, you know, and that was my first, you know, first kind of expression of what I was seeing. Now, for the people out there that may not know, do you want to talk a little bit about Age of Deceit and kind of some of the stuff you cover in there?
Yeah. Hold on, let me see here. I'm gonna end my live stream on my end just so
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
clean on this end, and then I'm gonna try to get that link. Can you send that link to your live stream so I can just send people who want to be a part of it your way, and then I can work on deleting the
Yeah, let me do
version
this.
of it
I'll
here.
give you a link to the chat, is what it is. I'll give you a link to the chat there, because if I put a link to the show, crazy, because all kinds of people will just start flooding into the actual show.
Okay.
Try this. I'll do it on Skype. So here's Skype.
Okay.
Link to the chat if you want to share that with some people.
Yep. So here's the chat link.
I know you're still trying to get adjusted, and that's okay. The people are cool. I think they'll wait, you know, and I appreciate, again, people in chat. We got already a bunch of viewers. So, guys, thanks again for your patience and everything. Just is what it is, man. You know, a lot
Yeah.
of shows I do will have some kind of little issues here and there, but at least we're here. It looks like we're on our way. So how you doing over there now?
Waiting for the live stream to stop. I hit the stop button. I'm getting the will of death. We couldn't get on, and now it's
Okay.
like you will not get off. You will stay
Oh, no
online.
problem.
Yeah. So you were saying about Age of Deceit, and just in general, really, it came from a place where, you know, I had been going through major transition in terms of life. Like, I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't know anything about Jesus, really. Literally, the most I knew about religion and Jesus and Christianity was through shows like The Simpsons and like Ned Flanders. That was about it. I was like, oh yeah, those crazy people. Um, but then, you know, it's funny. You look back and you see the seeds, right, that were planted, and that's what really led me to a place where I was open enough to visit a church when somebody invited me, and it just so happened to be well, the first weekend it was like the pastor was speaking at me. It was really weird. Just, God's timing, right? And then the second time it was actually Lee Strobel who did the Case for Christ. And that was, I think, God's timing as well, because obviously I'm coming from a very skeptical background. And so, that kind of thing led to needing answers. But at the same time, I had already read Mere Christianity just out of curiosity.
Oh, I love that. C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, so I had read that in college just out of curiosity, especially because in college I went to a public university. I went to UC Irvine. So, and I was studying sociology, so you can't get more liberal than that. But I realized that there was a lot of inconsistencies in what they were teaching and what they were saying. And, reading Nietzsche and like all these 20th century philosophers that were basically atheists, and they were coming up with these social constructs of what society should be, socialism basically. And it just didn't make sense to me. It was like, I don't know if that, in theory it sounds good, but I don't know that that's going to work in practice. You literally need everybody to conform, at a level that's pretty, you lose your individuality and all this stuff. So I had all these questions. But then Christianity, somebody had mentioned that Christianity has a different approach to this stuff. So, and I was curious about it. So that's why I read Mere Christianity. But so throughout that year, it was a big transition. Like, okay, there's something to this. I got to study it more. And then eventually, I think in 2007, I was baptized and, declared my faith in Jesus Christ. And it changed everything. It was like, wow. Like, for the first time, I have this freedom. I have this sense of purpose that's beyond anything that I ever had before. Everything seemed to be working great. And it was like, yes, I'm getting my life together. I'm seeing someone that I eventually became my wife and all this stuff. So everything was cool. But then, some ideas trickled into my mind, about the stuff that I was into before, which was a lot of, ET stuff and aliens, not demons necessarily, but just like extraterrestrials, a lot of that, a lot of like supernatural stuff that I was into with media. But, I didn't know that there was any true reality to it. But I was just curious, like, okay, what about this alien thing? Like, how does the Bible treat that? How does the Bible, use those topics or have views on those topics? So I started asking around, and I quickly realized that nobody really has a good answer. At least at my local church, nobody did. And they didn't have anybody to point to, even have answers or even begin to have answers. So naturally I go online, and I find some things, but it's a lot of it in terms of ET and Jesus, it was all New Age. It was all diametrically opposed to the stuff I was hearing about Jesus on Sunday in terms of who he was and who he is. So I was like, okay, so is Jesus Sananda, the Star Commander, or is he like the savior of the world? Like, how does this all work? And I was very confused, and it got to the point where I was literally like, okay, what's the deal here? Like, if the Bible's supposed to be true and it's supposed to, provide the truth to everything, then should even this topic be addressed or have some kind of explanation here? And it was, I was listening to Coast to Coast AM, which, a lot of people do. I don't know if it's as popular now. I'm sure they still have a big audience, but, at the time, this is 2008 maybe, still a pretty big show. And, so L.A. Marzulli comes on, and he's talking about the guidebook to the supernatural and this and that and the other thing, Yeshua and all this stuff. And I'm like, kind of sounds like Jesus talk, but I don't know. But then I looked into L.A. Marzulli. He had the Nephilim book. And that was the other thing. I started reading the Bible, like through and through. And I quickly came to the realization, like, what the heck is a Nephilim? And then I asked around church, and they're, how does it pertain to Jesus? Well, how does it pertain to your walk now? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to understand the truth. And if the truth is in the Bible, and the Bible talks about giants and Nephilim right at the beginning, I'm trying to understand how does that jive with, what we are told we know about reality or history or whatever. And nobody had an answer. There was a lot of mocking. There was a lot of, you don't need to pay attention to that stuff. Focus on these 4 books, which is the gospel, which, yes, of course, that's the most important part of the whole scriptures. But you can't just tell me to ignore 80% of the Bible, and pretend like everything's cool. So I was having a
Exactly.
real problem with that. And so again, it wasn't until finding some of these other researchers, then it started to snowball. I found VFTB with, excuse me, with Derek Gilbert, PID Radio, Future Quake, and it all started to kind of, and that was at the time when that community was really, really small. And it's been really crazy to see it get huge, really. I mean, the whole Bible prophecy thing was always kind of there, but to catch up to the Tom Horn transhumanism stuff, and it's been crazy. But then there's also been a lot of division in the recent years. I think that's on purpose, by the way. And whatever you believe of flat Earth, I think that topic has been very divisive, regardless of what truth there might be in terms of what's being lied to us, or the lies that are being told to us. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey. But Age of Deceit, really, the films, both of them, 1 and 2, and I'm working on 3 right now. Um, it has to come for me, like it has to be something where I can't hold it in anymore. I have to let it out. And that was the big thing. The big kicker was Joe Jordan talking about casting or ending alien abductions by calling out on Jesus' name, and it was like, whoa, that how come I didn't hear about this from any other UFO researcher? Nobody's talking about that.
Uh,
Why? So that was a big thing. And it was like, wow, that if that's true, and then you go to CE4 research and you find all the testimonies, and he's been doing that research forever. That's the stuff where it was like, okay, now it's starting to make sense. It's not this new age Sananda nonsense. It's not these channeled ascended masters. These are the angels of light that are demonic, that are Satan himself. And the truth seems to be rooted in this person of Jesus Christ and these other entities who appear to us in various forms. And Russ Dizdar always talks about that Greek word. I'm going to butcher it. I think it's like metaskitmatzetai or something. Basically, just the ability to morph, the ability to present themselves as different beings, different animals. And that's just a consistent thing throughout all spiritualities, religions. You look back and you just find that part of a culture, cultural sort of history, a memory that seems to align perfectly with all the world religions. And it's some people outside the faith look at that and say that's kind of arrogant to say that the Bible is the ultimate truth and tells the truth about everything. But then you dig into Dr. Michael Heiser's work of the Divine Council and these hierarchy of gods that rebelled, and then it's like, whoa, yeah, that's totally how all these religions could have sprung up, like these fallen angel
oh,
types
sure.
who
Sure.
rebelled and started their own thing and accepted worship like they were not supposed to. So it all started to click and make sense, and that's kind of the summary there in terms of Age of Deceit 1. And then 2 was more about transhumanism and how
Yeah.
alchemy, really looking at the history of alchemy and the trajectory of technology, and seeing one and the same. Like, whoa, the place where they're headed is exactly what they've been trying to do from the beginning. And you look at all the great stories of our time and our history, and a lot of it has to do with finding the fountain of youth and living forever, and it's all the same stuff. It's really weird to realize that and then see it everywhere.
Yeah. I want to say, I think it's great the way you put it, that you felt that you had to just get this out of you, this stuff. And I feel the same way. And you don't upload every day either, just like I don't, because I want to make sure it's stuff that counts. And I really, sit on a lot of this stuff for sometimes a week or a few weeks at a time. And then it just comes out. You've got to get it out there. And
Right.
I also feel that people like you and me, and there's a lot of others out there, I think that we were born at the time that we're supposed to be born, and that we're supposed to be the kind of teachers we are for these times, because before the internet and all of this, people had their own little tribes, as far as denominations and church and stuff, and those are basically just echo chambers. Now,
Right.
I'm not putting anybody down that goes to church or anything, because there's a lot of great people out there that have Christ in their heart and they mean well, even though the leaders might be wolves at times. But now, because there's times, you may get this too. I've had people try to criticize me. Why are you finding codes in movies and blah 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 and stuff like this? And it's like, because I can't not. That's just what I see. I feel that's what's placed in my heart to talk about and to put out there. And I know that this kind of information that there is literally helping to save souls. And I don't mean that in a prideful way, but just with the way the world is right now. And I believe that there's a prophecy from Daniel as well, that knowledge will be increased. So I always take that back to the computers and the internet. And, you can look up anything you want, of course, just Google it, right? Pretty much. So that's where we're at. And I think that there's a lot of teachers like us who have come around for this specific time, to really help to get the message out beyond the different tribes, the different churches and whatnot, to really spread this kind of information, because it helps. This is the kind of stuff that even for me, it strengthened my faith. I was always, ever since I was a little kid, I believed in God. I got saved at 11 and all that, but baptized and everything. But it just never really clicked until I got older, until I woke up to this stuff. And then it's like, wow, it became incredibly real to me. There's times I wish that, I could, or even like a group of us could, just travel around America or whatever and go to a lot of these different churches and denominations and maybe do a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation and show them these mysteries that are being revealed. You know what I mean?
Does
You would be, but what do you think about that?
hear me? Hear me?
Oh, sorry, man. You're cutting out a little bit on your end there.
Can you? Is that better? Check.
Much better. Yeah,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I'm brainstorming to put together a TED style talk that would be exactly that, a very gentle way to present the sort of realities that we're facing, especially with some of the, I've been looking at cryptocurrencies a lot this last year, and I think I think the Lord has led me to look at it, not because it's just, this crazy thing going on, but because it's really a new level of a foundation for this mark of the beast, image of the beast thing. And not that, I think there's also a transition happening financially, so that people, that it's almost a safe haven for a little while before, the real thing kind of kicks off. And that can happen at any point if there's, whatever, aliens that show up or whatever it may be. But yeah, the sort of there's always been a balance for me personally, because I've had the ability to work at a church as a tech and work a bunch of events. I was kind of at a semi mega church. It's kind of like the Saddleback Light out here, Saddleback with Rick Warren.
Yeah.
Big huge church, thousands and thousands of people go there, and they basically create these things called satellite campuses. And that's not what I was at, but they adopted the sort of Rick Wiles church model, the corporate church model. And so, this is how bad it got. I wanted to host a Bible prophecy conference at the church. They wouldn't do it. They would rather do a secular business meeting and allow them to host, or use the facilities, rather than a Bible prophecy conference. That goes to show how skewed their thinking was in terms of eschatology and come on, guys, this, we're talking about the Bible. And you'd rather have, some business network meeting thing, and allow that to go on. And I got to sit there and tech through a lot of events. I got to see a bunch of stuff, and it was good for me too. As a non-believer growing up, I got to get a really good education on, the basics of the gospel and sort of, the real basic stuff, but it was necessary. But yeah, I think there's a way that we can present it, especially now. It's just so much easier to do with there's a lot of facts that back up what technology is doing, where it's headed, where science is headed. And it's not science fiction anymore. It's really bridging that gap already. So if we can present it in a way where we can go to these churches and say, hey, and pose it as a question like, hey, would you take the mark? Because ultimately, when we talk about, at least in my area where I am in Southern California, the sentiment is already like, yeah, I don't want my kids to get lost in the woods. And we don't have
Exactly.
woods.
See, and even with the cryptocurrency, I haven't done a lot of research on that. It hasn't been one of my things, but one thing I've noticed is, when I was down in Central America, is when my bank, Citibank, switched over to the chip, and I'd go through a full line and get all these groceries, and then my card wouldn't work. I kept having issues with it. But even back then, I was just like, there's really no reason they needed it. The cards have been working fine for decades, but now all of a sudden we have to have a special chip on there. So obviously, for people who don't know, that's just one huge step, because that's where they're wanting to take us, is this, technological type mark of the beast. And that is going to be one of the biggest tests of everybody's faith. Can you imagine when they say you basically have to be a part of this? You've got to take this mark, however they want to, put it on you, to get groceries and to, just pay your bills and stuff. I mean, that's going to be the real test because time, at least I know I will, if we're still here, just be like, hey, this is time for full on faith in our Father, and He will take care of you. He will provide. He'll, the whole thing. But that's going to be a big test, man. It's going to be interesting to see how many people, go for it. How
Yeah.
many people fall prey to this.
Yeah, I mean, it was even and I was hanging out with Basil at the church. This is before we left the church, but we're hanging out and we had this conversation with a young pastor. He was like one of the new pastors, and I think the conversation was about stem cells, and that's a pretty good entry point, right? If you get your pastor talking about stem cells, you can kind of go in the direction of like DNA manipulation and transhumanism because it's not like totally out of left field. So we kind of went there and we're like, okay, so what about this? What would you do here if there's what about the microchip? So you can do all this. And my jaw was on the floor because he was like, oh, I'd totally do it. I can't wait, man. Like all this stuff holding it in your
Wow.
hands. It's ridiculous. And this is, I don't know, this is 2009, maybe 2010 or something. So it's like, whoa, this is the mentality of a pastor, like the young hip millennial pastors. They're just all about the microchip. That's not good. And also I think the thesis, at least from Age of Deceit 1, and it was really due to the work of Doug Hamp and Rob Skiba was on it too, and Tom Horn was on it. This idea that it's going to have something to do with changing your DNA more than just, not being able to buy and sell because of the chip. There's an element of you can't repent of it, because once you have it, your torment, the smoke of your torment rises forever and ever. So there's something eternally changed when you accept the mark. And that's why the theory is there's probably some kind of DNA manipulation that happens to where you're unredeemable. You become unredeemable. And that's kind of a crazy concept, but more than just your information being on the blockchain and your DNA being stored on the blockchain. If there is a two-way communication between your DNA itself and the big database of everything that's going to be sitting on the decentralized open ledger blockchain, wherever anyone can kind of look it up. There'll be privacy measures from the individual inputs and outputs, and I'm kind of getting technical with the crypto stuff, but that if there is a two-way communication, then we're talking about DNA change. If there's a mass upgrade to the system, and then you have a microchip, and it's able to sort of deploy synthetic materials into your system, whatever it is. I don't know how it's exactly going to look, but
Yeah.
it's crazy, and that, yes, of course, it's going to be a test, and that's why I think we should be moving towards. At least I am personally moving towards figuring out a way to be able to be fully sustainable, like living off the land, right? And not that I'm like a prepper, fear mongering, like, oh, it's all going to end. It's just kind of a common sense thing, and it's more of a sense of like, okay, if the Lord doesn't return, because obviously we want the Lord to return. Come quickly, Lord Jesus, end this now, please. But it's all in your timing. So it's like, okay, if it's on your timing and we're going to have to live through some of this craziness and the lead up to the actual prophecies being fulfilled, it's going to get pretty nuts. Then I want to be able to protect my family and protect anyone that's going to be, willing to stick with the truth. And that's what's crazy with all of this is, I don't really like touching on politics, but you see how manipulated politics is now, like the level of like deception and people call it, the two universes now, because there's two sides really, like the people that are totally buying the mainstream media BS and just regurgitating it, and those who are at least trying to think on their own and think critically about what's going on. And it's amazing to see, but I think it's leading towards this concept of, there's all these hate groups right now. It's white supremacy, and it was this group before, it's blah blah blah. It just keeps going down this path of like ultimately leading to what I think is going to be labeled or similar labeled to Christian extremism.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's going to
Yeah.
be very, very interesting to see who is going to stick to the truth and risk being labeled a Christian extremist, and who is going to be like, oh no, I'm for whatever, the LGBTQ whatever thing, and I'm for all this. See, I'm a good Christian. I'm not part of this fundamentalist
Right.
extremist Christian. It's going to cause a huge rift. in within the it already has, with the progressives and the not and the traditionalists, all this stuff,
For sure.
but it's going to get worse. And I think it's going to be very interesting to watch how people, try to stake sides to this debate.
I want to throw a few things out there at you just to answer a few things. So, one of the issues you're talking about again is, if we're still here, we got to figure out a way to live. I found myself in a really interesting position. I'll be talking about this soon. I have a friend who's down in Nicaragua right now. He's supposed to be flying back today, and he actually lives in Florida. And he's going to get some footage out there and everything else. And I'll explain everything in a future video, how I've met him and all this. But he's connected with a Christian businessman who's a multimillionaire who's already bought a lot of land down in Nicaragua, and they're wanting to sell it. There's going to be like a plot where there'll be like a whole kind of community set up. There'll also be a chance for you to have your own spot wherever you want. It's not a cult or anything. You don't have to like be a part of, whatever. It's just, these are possibilities, and I'm waiting to get all the full details. But when I do, I'm going to put it out there to the people, and just let them know kind of, this is something they're setting up as a literal kind of a bug out, for people that believe and want to live off the land. And, I pray like the rest, or like a lot of people, that I get taken. If there's a catching away, I want to go, man. I don't want to be here for all this, because I know that it'll divide families and friends, and it's not going to be pretty, but if not, yeah, we've got to live. So I'll get more into that once I find out more, and I'll tell the people. But besides that, I'm sure you saw that footage of, it was a CEO from Google, a female, a few years ago, talking about how they're going to create these kind of tattoo type things they can put on the back of your hand or whatever, right? And that'll merge with you. This goes back to how you're saying that it'll, the transhumanism aspect of how it'll change our DNA. She's talking about that and how you'll be able to just basically access your email and everything else like right in front of your face, right? It's going to be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that, and then I also see all the major predictive programming in TV shows and movies. Like there's another show coming up called The Gifted, about people getting superhuman powers, and there's all these, the comic book stuff is huge about people having superhuman powers. So I think that all feeds into this as well. It's all just a form of predictive programming, and it's just engineering us and getting us in that kind of thought. Because once they release this, there's my cat. Once they release this, it's going to be something that people are going to clamor for. It's not going to be like there'll be some of us that say no, but the majority of people, I believe, unfortunately, are going to be chasing it. Be like, oh, sure, I want to do that, and then it's going to be a bummer. But what do you think about all that?
Yeah, no, it's already happening. We had that story this year, just I guess a month or so ago, of that company, and I think it was Wisconsin, that the employees, they started microchipping the employees, and they had a microchip party and all this stuff. And no, this is headed in that direction. I think you're talking about Regina Dugan, who is the Google
Yes.
lady. And yeah, she's talking about taking a pill, and it's the smart particles and all this stuff. Yeah, it's really it's quite remarkable to think that that kind of stuff is even possible. Just a few years ago, it was like, oh, it's all science fiction. And even now, people are like, it's mostly science fiction, but the gap between what they're being fed through the predictive programming, through all the crazy stuff, and the reality of the situation, the gap is closing very quickly, and most people are unaware of it. And yeah, so that definitely, and that's why for me, that's been a big thing from the beginning. Like the whole transhumanist thing was really the part where it was like, okay, I really have to speak out on this, because it's so invasive. Like you don't have to be a Christian to see how invasive this is going to be. Anytime you start talking about the evolution of man, controlling our own destiny, human 2.0, that kind of language, it means you're killing off something, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think they focus on like the advancement, and they don't focus on like, okay, what are we abandoning as humans? And some people are asking questions like that, but mostly in the world of the tech, it's moving forward largely because it's funded that way. There are ethicists and philosophers and stuff who are discussing it a little bit, but the conversations, I think, are a little late. By the time they're public conversations, someone in some lab has already done some crazy things, and that's just on the biology level, right? I mean,
Yeah.
There's different categories, like the whole concept of a deep program beyond just a deep state, beyond just the black budget. We're talking like some people call it the secret space program, and I know some people don't believe in space, but there is a very, very deep underground project, I think, or a long-lasting project where there is a literal quote unquote breakaway civilization where it's a group of people, maybe a group of families who are born into a completely different society, basically, and they have all the technology to do whatever. Um, Man, when you start thinking, or the possibilities of how those two worlds are merging, because maybe they want to be more public, and they can't be unless their technology is being heard, and they want to play gods. So there's all these different angles, but yeah, I think even the kinds of UFOs and stuff that we've seen, a lot of them are high level technologies that we own, and there's that end as well. And the one of the rich, what was his name? I'm blanking on the name here. Rich. I think it's shoot, I forgot the name. Um, but he was the head of Skunk Works, who passed away in the early '90s. And he, Ben Rich, that's his name, Ben Rich. He was saying in one of his kind of bedside testimonies when he was on his deathbed that, or I guess this was at a different point after a lecture or something, but basically he said that the way these UFOs work is by mind control, like consciousness communication or consciousness, uh, connection with the craft. And there's a lot of, if you look at some of the testimonies, I know sometimes people are like, oh, these crazy testimonies of people going into these underground bases and the stuff they see and hear and whatnot. A lot of times these craft have some kind of organic element to it, which means that
Oh yeah.
they've engineered some kind of biology into this. And so when you start thinking about that, it's like, okay, so these UFOs might be hyper conscious biological entities that humans can sort of fuse with in a way to control it. And then what are we talking about? We're talking about like a
Mm-hmm.
complete traversing of the veil between this world and the next one, and just doing things that are physically impossible in this construct, and all that kind of stuff. So it's all crazy, man. And we wouldn't have, and you're right, we wouldn't have understood any of this stuff in terms of the context of Bible prophecy unless we were put here at this time. There's a lot of scriptures that we read today, and it's like, oh my goodness, like, wow, that resonates like like it never has in history. Like, there's been good
Mm-hmm.
interpretation throughout history, but man, that part of it really resonates. There's a lot of that. I'm reading the Bible through, and I run into that a lot. Like, and I don't always make it public, right? Because sometimes it can just be eisegesis as opposed to exegesis, where we're reading too much into the text. It's like, okay, we're taking the context we're in now, the contemporary context, and we're reading it into the Bible. And certainly, yes, I think we're all guilty of it a little bit, but I think you got to take it all into consideration. The exegesis, what the authors meant, but then you got to acknowledge that God's word is eternal. It's a living, breathing thing. So it's like, of course, it's going to speak to a generation that is far removed from Jesus himself, 2,000 years of him walking on earth. And it's still going to resonate. And it's going to resonate even more as society goes in this particular direction. So, I just want people to at least be open-minded enough to consider those things, especially the church, man, because the church is always so far behind on everything, right?
Yes.
So it's like, let's get ahead of the curve. And even then we're behind, but let's try to stay ahead. Let's try to keep informing, because once people see it, they can't unsee it. And I've noticed that that's how this community has grown, really. Once you see the truth and all this stuff, it's like, it's really hard to turn it off, And I think some of us have to turn it off at certain points. I mean, I have a family. I like to watch NBA basketball, knowing in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, great. There's probably some crazy Freemasonic stuff being peddled here, but I just need to get away from it for a few minutes. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
So
I do that a lot too. I mean, I've got some favorite shows I watch and all that, and I know the programming. I see it. I mean, Breaking Bad was one of my favorite series ever, but it was basically about sympathy for the devil. It's creating sympathy for people doing evil deeds. That's kind of the overall idea. It shows a good man turning bad. Um,
right.
but I'm a big fan of the UFO stuff, and I have a website, whoiskjosborne.com, and on there I actually just posted a new one. There was a UFO over Los Angeles recently that did quite the light show during the day and the nighttime. And in all the research I've done with this stuff, I see different forms of UFOs. Like you say, I think some are probably biological also. There's definitely the government run type UFOs. There's also one that's fascinating is the diamonds in the sky. They've done videos in the past. I've shown these diamond type UFOs in the sky that pulsate and change, and there's different colors inside of them. It's really weird. Even Stanley Kubrick knew about the diamonds in the sky. In 2001, A Space Odyssey, at the end of the movie, where the astronauts just kind of being launched through this whatever, like vortex or something at the end, there's a whole sequence he does, which is interesting, where at one point it shows the all-seeing eye, just the eye of the astronaut. Then it shows these 4 or 5 objects floating in front of him that are UFOs that suddenly turn into diamonds, bright diamonds. And then right after that, it shows his all-seeing eye again. And that was the complete sequence. So I sometimes wonder if those aren't the fallen ones, just coming in some form, because a lot of these Illuminati type artists, right, that we call, which is basically Satanists, and we know what spirit works through them, they talk about diamonds all the time in a lot of these mainstream songs. So I've always kind of drawn that conclusion that maybe that's what they're talking about. There's also the orbs that show up a lot that I'm fascinated in. And when you watch a lot of these UFO videos with just the orbs, they'll be spread out everywhere, floating around their own ways, coming together. But oftentimes you'll see 3 of them come together, and it's always in a pyramid structure.
Right.
And I see that as kind of like the satanic trinity. And that's why I think a lot of these are fallen angels, So, yes, there's so much happening in the skies. For those of you listening, if you want to see some videos on some of this, check out the website. I've got a lot of, I think, really good, legit UFO findings on there. But go ahead, man.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. You bring up the diamond shape because one of the cryptocurrencies, the big ones that came out of not nowhere, but in this last year just exploded, is called Ethereum. And Ethereum, their logo is basically a diamond, and as above, so below, sort of dual pyramid type thing going on. And at the same time, you probably have noticed the mention of Atlas a lot, like everywhere. There's a game called No Man's Sky that was like, a lot of people hated it because it seemed kind of pointless, right? But it's got this thing called the Atlas, which is supposed to be sort of I don't know, some kind of artificial intelligence system thing that causes creation. I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of the game, but same thing. It's a diamond shaped thing, and yeah, there's definitely something there because they don't just show symbols for no reason. All of them have meaning, and that's their language. Symbolism is the language of the elite occultists. So,
absolutely,
yeah. People always say, "Oh, it's just a thing," and yeah, certainly sometimes, yeah. But intention is such an important thing, because if someone is walking around with a triangle on their shirt, it doesn't necessarily mean they're like consciously like part of the Illuminati, right? The people have taken that way out of context. But if you're talking about television shows, movies, heavily funded, good evidence, documented evidence that they've worked with people in the CIA, and so not putting aside the spiritual stuff going on, the inspirations that people get, and you read the testimonies of some of these authors and whatnot, and how their stories came to their heads, and it's like, yeah, that sounds like something else was whispering into their heads.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, this is my inspiration. It's like, no, it came from somewhere else.
There's a couple of really famous occultists. They were from the Theosophy Society like 60, 70 years ago. It was a married couple, Alice and Foster Bailey, and they talk extensively about symbols, and the intention that's placed on them is what really matters. So yeah, that's the same thing. That's where I get with these movies and TV shows. They have a wicked intention with these things, and it really is lesser magic. It's the whole, if you allow it in, if you don't see it for what it is, they're telling you what they're doing. They're telling you this is poison that they're feeding you. But hey, if you don't see it, that's your bad. They told you. And it's like the whole cremation of care thing with Bohemian Grove. They can wash their hands of it. They told the people what they're doing. They just didn't see it,
Right. Yeah. It's pretty incredible the way they're able to hide in plain sight, It blows me away because especially folks that, and the ones that really bother me the most are the ones that are Christians who say like, oh, this is all stupid conspiracy theory nonsense. Those are the ones that really bother me because you ask them, how much time have you spent studying it? And usually they're like, not at all, so that's the thing. The closed-mindedness to all this is what drives me nuts. But yeah, the symbol stuff is, I know you can get carried away with it, but the thing that I think is really important for Christians to understand is that this whole thing of intention is really sort of the medium at which we even conduct prayer. Prayer is, there's got to be an intention to, have something move, in that faith, right? That God is going to move and do something, right? But it comes from us. It's not just like God is a genie and he just like does whatever we want. There's a purity of heart that has to be there, for prayers to sort of not just like come to pass or work or whatever. That's kind of the wrong language, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like it's people shy away from that because it's like, yeah. What I'm saying is, it's not. I'm not saying like we got to invoke stuff. What I'm saying is, with prayer, people have sort of made it into just like saying stuff, made it into just like a ritual, basically, especially in the church. Like, oh, we have our 30 seconds of prayer at the beginning and our 30 seconds at the end, and that's it, we're done. Meanwhile, you have
Exactly.
we have witches, and we have like serious magicians and sorcerers and stuff who are like invoking some really really negative stuff, attacking Christians, attacking churches locally. I bet a lot of these churches are attacked, from people in the underground that are doing stuff like that. And
Oh, sure. That's back to L.A. Marzulli, the Dark Awakening stuff and all that.
yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
go
the
ahead.
Black Awakening with Russ Dizdar. That's yeah, and we don't do much about it, and it's like,
Oh, sorry. Thanks. That was Russ
yeah, Russ
Dizdar.
Dizdar.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, that we don't do much about that, and it's like we have a lot more that we can do in terms of spiritual warfare with prayer. And I'm not really a charismatic type because I think there's some problems with some of the way that stuff is peddled. But I think there is something to, like, if somebody comes and is clearly demonically possessed, you can do prayer and try to help that person get rid of the demons. And that's not like, I think when you try to do it on stage and stuff like that, you lose some of the reality of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. But again, that's why I mean intention, like the purity of the heart. Like, the Christian has power, and I mean that in the not so like the new age way, but just literally, we have the authority in Christ to be able to fight this stuff at a spiritual level, because that's what it is that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So that's another thing that I'm trying to instill, and that's a major point also in Age of Deceit 3, as I kind of put it together, is that
Cool.
we have this ability to actually make a difference, and it's not just like understanding stuff, because I think we're
Oh,
going to run
man.
into it. We're going to run into it more and more.
I was just talking about this on my last show. I actually went to work, because of the YouTube stuff and all that. I got a job, and this lady I was dealing with was definitely under demonic influence, and I know that sounds crazy to some people, but I mean, it manifested in psychological ways. She was bipolar. She was vicious. She could be really sweet one second and evil the next. And tried to make a display of us employees by putting us down in front of customers, just really bad stuff and all that. And they fired me eventually, just a few days or about a week ago now. I've been fired, but because I think it was more of a spiritual thing, because they showed on their sales that I'd helped them out a lot and I was doing good and I was good with customers and I wasn't, messing around, doing anything wrong. And then just out of the blue, one day she got nasty with me, and it's hard for me to fake it. I just kind of stayed away from the rest of the day. And that was my downfall, I guess, because I couldn't just fake it. And she usually hires much younger people, I think, that'll just tolerate that stuff. So that was the end. But when I was driving home from there, I was thinking about all that too, about the manifestations of the Holy Spirit and how we're supposed to be able to lay hands on people and exorcise demons. And I just start wondering, like, wow, when can we start putting this stuff into play? What's the right time to do that? I don't want to be, because that could be seen as cuckoo crazy, by
Right.
most of the public if you start doing this stuff. But it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You don't that's been, especially out here where I'm at, like there's a community of Christians that are really into that kind of stuff. But to me, my experience anyway, they're sort of more interested in not necessarily publicly displaying it, but just sort of, I don't know. There's an arrogance to it when they go around and
Their
doing
own
it.
glory, yeah,
Yeah.
their own glory. Hen video, I love it. It's Benny Hinn, and he's they got the song "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor." Let
Yeah.
the bodies hit the floor. Have you seen that? And he's
Yeah,
just
I have.
bam, like knocking the demons out of people. And yeah, it's people like that which have really done a disservice, because it takes away from the true beauty of this kind of power that we all hold.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up Benny Hinn, because locally he has kind of his chapter here. I think his headquarters here. And I actually know somebody who was uh, not working directly as far as the ministry side of things with them, but working as kind of a guard, basically, because he's kind of not a celebrity per se, but he's well known and he goes around and needs protection and whatnot. And my buddy was a Christian, is a Christian, and he asked him point blank, like, "Hey, where in the Bible is some of the stuff that you do?" And I guess he kind of looked at him and said, "It's not, but it works." And he kind of went back to his sandwich or something. And again, this is like secondhand, whatever, but that's the kind of attitude that this man had about it. And man, he makes millions of dollars, doing his thing. And
Yeah,
people still go to this guy. Like, come on. He's been, how many years ago, how many years has it been since like this kind of thing has been out of the loop? But people, and that shows me also that people are still desperate. They're
oh,
desperate to have
totally.
some kind of like truth to hold on to. And I think that's part of why, like our community of people are like, okay, we don't necessarily have to put on a display of stuff as long as we understand it, and we will know. I think if you truly see some kind of crazy manifestation in the grocery store or something like that, and it's a real demonic thing, and you have that Holy Spirit tug of like, all right, I should really do something, um, you'll know. You'll know.
Man, I had an experience at all things at a Subway restaurant. It was down in Costa Rica, and of course, most people out there speak Spanish, right? So not my Spanish is maybe 20-25%, but so I was going through the line, and there was an American guy in the shop, and he was sitting at a table, and he was rocking back and forth, saying, "Do you want to know the truth? Do you want to know the truth? Do you want to know the truth?" He kept doing it, and the people in the restaurant just were trying not to pay any attention to him. So I get to the line, I paid for my stuff, I turn around, he's sitting there rocking back and forth, and he looks right at me. He says, "Do you want to know the truth? Do you want to know the truth?" And I sat down right across from him, and I said, "Yes, I want to know the truth. I'm ready for the truth. You're not ready for the truth. Do you want to know the truth? You're not ready for the truth." And he just kept doing that. I never got anywhere with the guy, and I just said, "Okay, see ya," and just left.
Yeah.
But even on my ride home, I was thinking, darn, man, like, again, if I was just more secure in my own, or in not mine, but in the power of the Holy Spirit, this is a guy I should have pulled outside if I could talk to him and actually laid hands and said, "In Jesus' name, what's the name of you, demon, what's your name?" And, try to get it out of him or whatever. And I didn't. But yeah, so just throwing that out there. But yeah, even the Joel Osteen thing is another one of those hen things, and he's been exposed for what he really is. And because when that whole story broke, I was sitting there thinking, because my life financially has always been up and down. It's been peaks and valleys my whole life, which is fine. You learn a lot in the valleys. You know what I mean? But I was thinking, darn, man, if I had the kind of money Austin had, and I think a lot of us would probably feel the same way, I mean, I would be like having teams of people getting their butts out in the street and helping out homeless, maybe build a shelter next to the church or something, just do anything you can to really start helping people out and stop, crying about your tithings in these church and just telling people happy things all the time, get really into the truth. But like the Lord told us, we're supposed to be helping out the disenfranchised, so really get out there and help the disenfranchised. But unfortunately, yeah, there's still people that are going to go to that church. Still, a lot of people in the comment sections backing up Austin for what he did, and that's what we're up against. It's interesting. So people like you and me and others that do what we do, I'm sure you get it too. You get equal hatred from atheists and quote Christians. I'm sure, right? Or do you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's usually more vicious from the Christians, I have to say, than atheists. Atheists will, if they're the atheists I've run into, if they're intelligent enough, they'll engage in conversation. And I studied a lot of apologetics early on, so I know how to sort of, and I don't mean this in like a negative way, but like kind of corner them in their thinking in terms of like how
That's a gift.
bankrupt atheism is when you really get down to it. Um, and it's funny when you get to that point too, because you basically have to agree to nihilism, which is like nothing has any meaning at all. And you take them there, and they sit there. They're like, yeah, that's right. No meaning. There's no meaning. And I'm like, well, but you don't live that way. You think you have meaning in life, don't you? And he's like, well, yeah, but that's because it's my life and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, there you go. So you can't have those two things be the there's no agreement there. And so you'd have to agree that you're the whatever purpose you feel to wake up in the morning is just a strong delusion. And they're like, well, no, I know my purpose is real, but well, yeah, but if you again take it logically, atheism, it goes to, and Marx was right in that regard, that it takes you to a nihilistic place. But anyway, I'm kind of getting sidetracked with that. But
No, that's good stuff, man. I love it. It's because I've always believed, it's just my own belief, but that God placed it on all of our hearts to cry out to him, no matter how much of an atheist or whatever anybody is out there, that it's in Christ is in all of our hearts, and it's there, and some people just, I heard somebody explain one time about this, that about their conscience, and they're saying that, what if there was a box around your heart, and every time you sinned, against the Lord or against yourself or whatever, it took a little turn and it hurt really bad. But what happens is that people just keep doing sinning and doing what they do because they're seeking temporary pleasure as well. This is a dark
Right.
world, sometimes, and as time goes on, the corners of that box turn into a sphere. They rub off. So eventually, you get to a point where that's where you're lost. You no longer are listening to that voice of God inside you. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Um, yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that. Uh, in terms of what was the other thing that we were discussing here a moment ago?
Oh
We were
gosh, we're
talking
talking about
about
the atheists and how you're talking to the atheists and all that.
right. And there was the other part, Christians going after me. Uh, that's the other thing that's been interesting because when I first got into all this stuff, I had a lot of people tell me like, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about Bible prophecy because it's so divisive." And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think there's some consensus about where we are, and if you look at it point blank, there's some stuff that really resonates and blah blah blah. And as I went along, I was like, oh, I get it. I understand now. Like I can see why somebody said that because people get really, really, bent into some sort of eschatological doctrine. And once people once you write a book on it or something, then you can't like change necessarily your views without like totally undermining your own work. And so people get stuck kind of peddling the same sort of thing, even if there's problems. And I don't want to necessarily, pin specific doctrines or anything like that, but I think we just have to approach it with an open view or open mind with some of this stuff because we don't know. We see through a glass darkly. We don't know the day or the hour. We can kind of sense the season, but there are certain mysteries I think that are in the scriptures for a reason, and that's probably also so that the enemy doesn't necessarily get a hold of everything, and for that to occur, then we don't get to necessarily know everything, right? Um, so there's that level of it, but then also I think there is an interplay here where uh, God God allows our free will to sort of exist, and we get to also play a part in how prophecy is fulfilled. And what I mean by that is, by being salt and light, salt being something that prevents decay, right? You put the meats and stuff like that in the salt,
Yes.
it prevents it from rotting. So, yes, doing that. And then also light to shed light into dark places and to maybe revive those areas. In that regard, we have this duty to do that and share the gospel, which is it's not us, it's the gospel that really shines through. um, that sort of thing to me is I think more important than like I know that the rapture is happening on this date, or you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like that whole thing really is just distracting. It discredits you publicly. It doesn't draw anybody closer to the Lord in terms of the lost world. Nobody's like coming, oh, you know what, I totally agree with you now, the rapture is happening on September 23rd, and I know people are looking at that date, and yes, does seem to be some kind of celestial alignment that is very reminiscent of Revelation 12. I will not deny that. I will also acknowledge that it is 33 days after the eclipse, and I will also acknowledge that a lot of crazy things have been happening since the eclipse. So, I'm not dismissing all of it, but at the same time, to say that this or that's going to happen, you're in dangerous territory, man, because you can really really tarnish your sort of your evangelism by doing that.
Oh
So
yeah, and think of all the people that stumble for these false date setters and whatnot, and those people are going to pay a really heavy price, and that's not cool. And excuse me, I also want to piggyback off something else you're just talking about us, how we're the salt, and I wonder sometimes how it all works out with us exposing what we expose. But looking at it like in a bigger sense for me, like through spiritual eyes or whatever, sometimes I think like this. Like in the Bible, it tells us that no man knows the day or the hour, and sometimes I think that God put that in there because it's up in the air. In other words, we can pray for things to get better. We can pray for more time. And we've seen that in the Bible in the past, right? And God will listen to his people if enough people are praying about these things. So sometimes I feel like that's where people like us come in, where we're showing, we're holding up a black mirror to this world and we're showing everybody all the darkness in this world. And my hope is that that's enough to get people to start praying more about these things. That makes sense. Oh, looks like you're accidentally muted. Sorry, man. Let me go ahead and
oh no, that was me. That's
go in
fine.
my.
Sorry, I kept yapping. I was
Okay.
muted. Yeah,
No,
no,
that's cool.
that's you're spot on because the light shines really really bright in dark places. Like if you have the light in a bright room, it doesn't. I mean, it's there, but it's not as powerful as when you bring it into a room that is completely dark. So that's why I think it becomes really obvious what the truth really is when it comes to this stuff. And you know, the transhumanist topic is, man, it's really dark when you look at it. And I think people don't realize it because it's packaged in a way that it's super cool and hip and all this stuff. And but then there's also, even in the predictive programming, there's a lot of dystopic imagery. And so I think, they're trying to get that into our heads as well, like, hey, that we're going to live in this quote unquote post-apocalyptic thing, some event's going to happen. And I think all those possibilities are there. And yes, I do think we've averted certain things just based on, us making a video about it.
Oh yeah, man, I think so too. Yes.
So, I think we are making a difference. The real big sentiment with that in the last year that I've seen is, hey, we got Donald Trump into office. God answered our prayers, right? And some people go as far as to say that this is, there's a Mark Taylor prophecy about Trump and all this. And, I tend to think like maybe a little bit because obviously it's better than Hillary, but there's a part of me that's
Yeah.
like, you know what? They must have allowed this guy to take office because a lot of the New World Order focus and some of the things they were trying to do has already happened. And I think this past weekend with the whole BRICS thing in China and the gold backed yuan and all this stuff, that's a topic we can get into if you want to. But that's the kind of stuff where I think the New World Order system working through China is much easier to accomplish because they are a sort of communist nation, and
Oh
by
yeah.
default, the whole concept of a new world order is a more or less communist socialist type of philosophy. So it's easier to build it through that than to build it through the United States. And the United States is good for other things, right? For the building up of the military industrial complex, the mind control stuff, the MK Ultra stuff. And just creating a nation of sheep, right? That's the stuff that's been working over here. But in terms of a government that brings about this stuff, it's much easier to do in China. So that's why I think like, okay, maybe they just allowed Trump in because on one hand, yeah, it preserves some of our national identity, or it's trying to anyway. Um, but at the same time, man, the stuff is already it's crazy. Like the New World
Oh,
Order system is being built with Trump too. It's not like he's
yes.
just not totally fighting it. And I know that's been the narrative, like, oh, he's not part of the deep state. Yeah, he's part of the other half of the deep state. There is a rift within the deep state, but it's just another part of it. And I don't know what you think about this, but I think all this weather stuff we've been seeing, I really think it's like some kind of unleashing of weather weapons. And with weather weapons, it's not like, you don't have to have like a blaster in the air that like creates a typhoon or something like that. It's just causing pressures in certain areas of the ionosphere to create, more a stronger storm, or you know what I mean? It's not like directly creating stuff. It's manipulating the stuff we can manipulate to help assist in some of these quote unquote natural disasters. And man, I always go back to Jesus talking about, there will be earthquakes in various places and wars and rumors of wars and all this stuff. And people always say like, oh, that's been the case forever. And that's true. But as far as the earthquakes in various places, that's a really interesting one because people have always thought that like, oh, that just means more natural disasters, right? But as we kind of start understanding geoengineering and more people expose it, it's like, obviously Jesus knew that there's going to be some kind of manipulation here of the weather even, right?
Oh
And
man, I'm glad you're getting into this. I want to add something real quick, and
yeah,
then please continue. My home state's Oklahoma, and that's where I came back to after Costa Rica to be with my family and everything. But you can look this up. You may already know, but Oklahoma has more earthquakes now than like any other place around, and we're right in the middle of America. And out here, they're trying to blame it all on fracking.
fracking. I
Okay.
remember that. I remember reading those articles talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's crazy. I felt heavier tremors here than I did when I lived in Los Angeles for years, and I had tremors out there too. So it's pretty crazy, man. And that goes back to that as well. And yes, all the geoengineering and the stuff with the weather. I look at it in two ways. One, it creates a great distraction so they can get away with other things, the people in charge. And secondly, the devil came to steal, kill, and destroy. So it's just kind of playing into that as well. It's just more destruction, more sadness, and misery being spread.
Yeah, what's really interesting as well with in connection to all this is there's been a lot of talk about Antarctica and what did they discover there? Is it ancient technology? Is it remnants of Atlantis? All these rumors. Newsweek ran an article. It's under opinion, but it's an article titled "Antarctica: What Would Happen If All the Volcanoes Buried Beneath the Ice Erupted?" And it's like, okay, why are they even putting this in the public conscious? Like, what
Yes.
is the deal with that? And then you find out that it's actually an article that was published on The Conversation, which is this is like a globalist publication. It's kind of the cool hip indie sort of journalism meets academia type of thing that has writers and editors from like all over the world. They have a bunch of different countries that are part of this, and they're all kind of, you can see where the funding is coming from. It's not just like a random small thing. It's these are a group of people who uh, whether knowingly or not are part of helping build the system. So that gets published on Newsweek, and we have all this weather stuff too, right? That's crazy that we haven't had like a hurricane in how many years, and all of a sudden we have two, like
Yeah,
devastating us,
even
devastating the coast. I mean, come on, like, and it's a week after the eclipse, and the day after the eclipse, Trump goes to Phoenix and the Phoenix Rising. I mean, dude, it's like everywhere now, and so it's hard to keep up.
yes.
It's very,
You
very
know,
hard to keep up.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I want to add in real quick. Jonathan Kleck, I believe, is the one that did this, but he broke down the names of the last two hurricanes, and I can't remember exactly what they came out to be, but they definitely had a lot to do with the times we're in. So, folks out there, if you want just a little fun research, look up the names of these Harvey and Irma and see what those mean. But please continue.
Yeah, and this is part of, and I mentioned China earlier in the BRICS thing this weekend, and their whole thing was Agenda 2030 to be compliant with the whole Agenda 2030 process. And so within all this chaos that's been unleashed, they have a plan, right? They want to have a sort of they call sustainable development in place by the year 2030. And in order to do that, Trump even talked about we need to build infrastructure, we need to rebuild America, right? Well, what's a good way to? What do you do before you rebuild anything? Have you watched those like HGTV shows?
Oh, yeah, flipping houses and stuff
Flipping
like that.
houses?
Sure.
Yeah, you demo it first, right? You just demolish it and then you rebuild. And so I don't know. Maybe I'm just like giving way too much credit to the elite or whatever, but it just seems to me that it's just the timing of it all just seems a little suspicious. Where now all of a sudden we have all this destruction, the biggest hurricane to ever hit the United States, and my heart goes out to those people, and I know a lot of people have donated and have helped out, boots on the ground type of thing. But it just makes me wonder, like, okay, now we're going to rebuild Houston. Are we going to rebuild parts of Florida? I don't know, but it the 5G rollout. There's so many topics. I don't know
Yes.
how to keep it
I
all
want
in
to get into
focus.
that. Yeah, I want to get into the 5G with you in a second. I know you covered that. I want to throw something else in here back on the Trump thing. But so, the whole Trump narrative is very interesting and the way the media is playing it up. And I'm putting some of this in a new video I've been working on, but it's very interesting. And, whether he got in or not the right way or this way, or whether he's working for God, because, God can use a wicked man, right, to do whatever he wants. It doesn't matter. But it's interesting the way the narrative is being played out. I can't even watch any news. Sometimes I'll try like some of the mainstream news, and it's just all Trump stuff, all the celebrities and everything. And it's also coming out in a lot of TV shows and movies. So I've covered American Horror Story a few times from Ryan Murphy as the guy that created it, and it definitely a demonically influenced dude. Tons of symbolism in these shows and everything. So last night, the first episode of the new season called Election came on. It was either last night or the night before, and I've got different bookmarks and stuff and sites I go to see what's coming on. And I saw that popping on, so I went ahead and watched it. And wow, you want to talk about some major predictive programming with Trump and everything. It actually opens with the election and Trump being elected, and it shows two different people watching the election. One is like a group of the liberals, like really well-to-do liberals, all attractive, lots of money. It's a lesbian couple, and they're having kind of a party. The main lady like freaks out. I mean, she really starts wigging out about Trump winning. Like it's at the end of it, he's going to destroy everything. And then on the other hand, you've got this guy that's clearly out of his mind. Like once he sees it, he's got like long hair, it's all dyed blue and stuff, and he starts screaming "F the world, we win" and stuff like this, and he starts actually humping his TV set as Trump's on this monitor. And as the show goes on, the lady that's freaking out starts having these visions of clowns, evil clowns. And of course, I've covered the evil clown stuff, and I believe it's just another manifestation of more wicked spirits being released, coming onto the earth. So this guy winds up, paints himself up as a clown, hangs out with a bunch of killer clowns, and they go out and they murder people because they feel like now that Trump's been elected, that this has completely released this spirit, and now they can go out and cause damage and chaos. So
Wow.
interesting, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. The predictive programming in some of these recent shows. There's another show called Salvation that you can get on Prime, and I think
What is that one about?
yeah, this is it's interesting. It's actually about it follows a guy named Darius Tans. He's kind of like your Elon Musk. He's got like a space program, Ark kind of thing, Ark of Noah type thing going on. But basically, the story is that there's an asteroid headed for Earth, and they have to try to figure out a way to divert it and whatnot. And so the U.S. government is working with this Tans Industries, which is sort of the tech company, to try to come up with ways to avert it. And then it's all the drama within. So I'm not going to get into all that, but it's really interesting because throughout the show they don't show the president until very recently, and the president was a female. So I think when it was written, it was like, oh, we're going to expect to have a female president or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that part of it. But then in this last episode, and I hate to give away spoilers if you guys want to watch it, basically the president was having health issues, and she couldn't remember like certain days. She would have good days, she would have bad days, and she's doing this live press conference where she's about to announce to the world that this asteroid is going to come and hit Earth in 60 days unless we're able to do blah blah blah. And by the way, there's a whole Russia drama in there too, which is hilarious. Just based on everything happening with all the Russian narratives, it's hilarious because they actually make it look like the United States government is the bad guys and they want to destroy Russia because there's a way to avert the sort of asteroid so that it hits all of Russia instead of the United States or whatever. So anyway, the president has these like headaches, and while she's giving this announcement, she kind of starts choking, she can't talk, and she dies. Okay, so there was a story, a couple stories actually, this last or maybe 2 weeks ago, where it talked about diplomats. I think it was in Cuba. I may be wrong about that. Somebody might remember, but basically these diplomats were having like hearing issues, and they admitted in like the mainstream articles or whatever that a sound weapon was used, and they were like, oh, maybe it's inadvertent or whatever, but there's all this speculation that it was actually the kind of technologies that people get abused with, right? The oh gosh, what is it called, the voice to skull technologies and stuff like that, where people can control have you seen like the newscasters where they stop talking, like they can't talk anymore, they start stumbling on the words, that kind of stuff? I think that stuff is like weapons, dude. Like they're testing some mind control stuff where they're able to direct energy at people and certain like waves, brainwave lengths and stuff, and cause them to just like and
Yes.
and it made me just think, at some point they might do something like that. And I'm not endorsing any kind of thing against the president or anything like that. I'm just saying, they're showing this kind of stuff, and obviously it's a show, but it's conditioning people to, like, number one, sort of have sympathy for the female president, right? But then also, also when she dies, like the other guy takes over or whatever, and he's part of and it's assumed anyway, at least after 9 episodes, that he's the guy that's actually behind like hacking into Tan's industries and
he's the bad guy.
He's the bad guy. He's the deep state bad guy, right? So
let me throw this at you real quick. Very interesting. I just read an article a few weeks ago out of Hollywood, and they were saying that for a few years now they've had all these TV shows and movies that were shelved that have to do with evil presidencies, wickedness in the White House and all this. And now that Trump's in, that they're going to start unleashing more of this. So it's interesting. I wonder, they could be writing new episodes for this show and just kind of going with that or whatever. But I'm sure we'll see a lot more of that too. And also, I have a cousin that is around my same age, and God rest his soul, he actually just passed away about 3 months ago now. And
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I loved him a lot. And now he suffered from schizophrenia, and it all kicked in around the age of 30 for him. He was a brilliant musician, but we were pretty close, man. When I moved to LA, he actually came out about a year later, and wanted to come out there. So he was out there for about a year or so when I was there. And we had real in-depth conversations because I'd pull him aside and I'd had dinner with him a few times and just said, tell me everything, John. What's in your head? What's in your mind? Because he's having a lot of difficulty. And he said, he goes, I know it's going to sound crazy to you, and that's why I never told my family. I told them later, like after he passed, we've had talks, me and his mom and dad, but that he firmly believed that somebody was literally controlling his mind from somewhere else, that they would cause him to think things and cause him to do things. And that's where we get into the really wild stuff. Even back then I was wondering, could it be real? Are we just going to say he's psychotic and a little crazy for whatever reason? Or is he a targeted individual, spiritually or even scientifically? I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to add in. Go ahead and continue, man. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a possibility. And again, that question of like, is it technological or is it spiritual? That barrier is sort of blurred now. Like, there's not a distinction. And the more we get into those technologies, the more, it's that oh man, the quote from I quoted it in my video in Age of Deceit 2, and I can't remember it right now. It's been used a lot in TV shows and stuff. It was used in Thor. The quote is basically, any advanced forms of technology is indistinguishable from magic. And you'll hear that. I think it was in another recent movie. Man, I can't remember which one it was, but they use it constantly. And they're sort of, again, I think they're conditioning us to think like, okay, advanced technology is what ancient people thought of as magic or sorcery or all that stuff. And the other way to look at it is like, no, it's the same thing. Like, it's been the same forever. It's just, now there's different methods, more tangible methods to access some of these powers and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's just gonna get crazier and crazier, and it's gonna be important for us to try to build and continue to encourage the community of folks who are willing to sort of support people like us. But also, because the biggest thing I hear, I don't know about you, KJ, but the biggest thing I hear is like, hey, where can I find a church where I can find people like this? And it's like, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I can't tell you. And so,
Yeah, I'm afraid to do that too. However, I had two Christian friends come visit last night. We all went to dinner, and it was so nice, like holding their hands and praying with them, and like just being in that kind of little group. And I told them I don't get enough of this because I mainly do stuff online, and I don't go to any churches or anything. So I
yes.
get the sense of community, which is wonderful, but I think we have a great community here. You do too. You've got your radio show, and we get to talk and meet people, and it's very encouraging. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I don't know if I can really tell someone to go there because most churches to me are just echo chambers, and they're just going to keep talking about the Bible, which is fine. But you can read it on your own, and
Yeah.
ask the Lord to like guide you in what you need to know in there. But yeah, that's what they are, mostly echo chambers. And like we were talking about earlier, wouldn't it be nice to be able to do a TEDx type show or a whatever in some of these churches and show them some real heavy spiritual truth? However, I think that most of us, we may be chased out of there with pitchforks and fire, for being heretics or whatever, but
Yeah,
go ahead,
if
man.
they even allow us to get on stage in the first place, right? Because a lot of that stuff is very censored, if you will. But yeah, the other part of it, the other angle to this, because it's hard to be like, oh, go to this church, go to that church, but it is important to have that physical community, because ultimately you can be the one to start help waking people up, right? If you go to like small groups and whatnot, I know it's not the easiest thing to do, but if you're passionate about some of these topics that we talk about, it comes up in conversation all the time. And you can bring it up with movies now. You can go see, the Avengers movies and whatnot. And it's a very easy conversation to bring up because you can start showing them the facts about some of this
Oh,
stuff.
totally.
Right? So,
Man, you're right. That's a good point. I mean, I just saw a commercial for a new Lego movie coming out. It looks like Ninja something, but anyway, the whole idea is it's about the Antichrist. It's about the son of a guy that's trying to destroy the world, and he's the good guy. And that goes back to that same programming. It's like every one of those comic book type movies coming out, there's always one person bent on destroying the human race,
right.
right? But go ahead.
Yeah. And some kind of anti-hero. Uh,
Yep.
yeah. So, looks like my baby's awake. You want to say hi?
Oh,
You want to say
okay.
hi to the peoples?
Aw, hey man, is it little boy or girl?
Little girl Kaya.
It's a great name, man. Oh, hey.
She's recovering from surgery. She had a procedure done on her kidneys last week, so
Oh, sorry to hear that, man. Hope
yeah,
everything's good.
she's doing really well. We had a big group on Facebook praying for her and stuff like that. So I think
Good.
that kind of stuff helped. But
I bet, right?
yeah, for sure, man, it changes. I mean, I had a daughter. I have a daughter, a 16-year-old daughter. She's my stepdaughter.
No way.
Yeah, she's my stepdaughter. So I didn't get to be a part of the early parts of her life. Came into the picture when she was like 4.5. So having like the baby is different. It's totally different. It's like, wow, this is, and it sucks because I've been talking to my other daughter. Like, it sucks that I missed those early years, but you know,
Is your other daughter, how is she in the world? Is she awake? Is she aware? Is she falling into any trappings? That's a really dangerous age, I know.
yeah, she's 16. She's very, thank God, she's very modest. And she's very low key. She's a smart girl. She doesn't, sneak out at night or do anything crazy. But there's another part of this. It's funny you mentioned that because part of it is like, oh, that's good. She's not like a crazy hooligan. But the other part of it is she doesn't necessarily like she's working on her driver's license right now, but it's not an urgent thing for her. She's on the computer a lot, playing games and whatnot and talking to friends. And she's awake. Like, she knows what I talk about. So, she's very up to speed on all this stuff, but like she doesn't care as much, because she's at that stage where she's just like, I'm just trying to get through high school. She does kind of have an attitude of like, well, everybody else is kind of, and she goes to Christian school and she even sees it like, man, everybody else is just kind of in their little, haze. And she understands there's more to the world and more stuff going on, but I think she's just trying to get through high school right now. So, um,
I understand that. And, I've admitted in the past I do play some video games. That's the way I escape sometimes. But
yeah,
some of the games I play on, it's a lot of like kids, younger people that are playing. I can tell by the way they talk. And even with stuff like that, I see a lot of them like mocking Illuminati stuff. Like, oh, I'm the Illuminati. I'm going to kill your family. They'll joke around with stuff like that. So it's
yeah,
just interesting that it's so out there, but
yeah,
they just don't take it in the right context, I suppose. But go ahead.
yeah. And she's the other part of it is, like I mentioned, the driver's license thing. I mean, when I was 16, I was like, dude, when can I get my driver's license? Right? Like, when can we start driving?
Yeah.
That's dead. That whole thing is dead. Like, every kid, there's a lot more folks, at least in California, who are kids who are waiting to get their driver's license till they're later, 18, 19, 20, some people in their mid 20s. And it's because, number one, they've been chaperoned around by their parents, their whole lives. So why would they need to drive themselves? And then also, that's part of the conditioning for smart cities and, having that mentality, that super cosmopolitan mentality where, I don't want to have to drive myself. I need somebody to drive for me. It's a service, right? Uber, stuff like that. All those things are contributing to this change in concept. And I'm starting to sound like an old fuddy duddy now, right? Like, oh, the kids these days. But I think the mentality is leading to the whole 2030 agenda, like what they want to do with smart cities, with uh driverless
Tiny
cars.
houses.
Yeah, just nobody owns anything. We're all sharing everything. And you know again, conceptually, sure. In practical reality, I don't know how it's going to work. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think these kids are being conditioned with the education system, what it is, to.
Oh, darn. I think I just lost him, man. Like he just dropped. So maybe he completely just dropped. He's got his baby with him. I was going to ask him how much more time he had anyway. So hopefully he'll pop back in. Here he is. Hey, Gons. I see you there. You're
Okay.
muted. You got it. You okay?
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I was, baby started pulling on stuff.
Well, I was going to ask too. I know you've got your hands full. So do you have a little more time? And if not, that's okay. Hi, buddy.
I can probably do a few more minutes.
Well, then what I'd like to do, then we can kind of shift gears here before we go. Again, I just want to say it's been such a pleasure meeting you, man. I mean, I'm
Yeah. It's
sorry
been
it's
a long
taken so
time,
long.
dude.
You're one of those. Yeah, it's been too long. I've been really wanting to talk to you forever. Is there anything you'd like to cover just before you go, or just anything you want to say to the audience?
Um, not no topics really, but I appreciate everybody who's in the chat and who've been supporting guys like KJ, guys like myself. It really, it does mean a lot for you guys to support us and share links and it makes a difference, in terms of
You have a
our sort of
Patreon.
morale. Yes, I have a
Thank you.
Patreon. Um, I think I support you on Patreon.
I support you too. Yeah,
Yeah,
man,
try to
that's
support
cool.
that.
And
That's the cool thing with Patreon. You can support like each other and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's great. I think even Patreon is, eventually that's not going to work either. But
I know, right? Like it certainly seems that way. Where
yeah,
I'm hanging on, I don't upload anything directly there. I just use that as a link if people want to support the website and stuff. Because,
right.
because I don't want them seeing my content. Because they could shut it down real easy. But so for those of you out there, please check out Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. Also check out, how can they find Canary Cry Radio?
Yeah, if you go to canarycryradio.com or type in Canary Cry Radio on iTunes or any podcast app, you'll find it. We also do Canary Cry News Talk every week. It's usually Monday or Tuesday we post, and that's more of talking about the topics that you don't necessarily get from mainstream or even the alternative media, which right now is so heavily political. We try to stay away from the political stuff. We try to give you guys a lot of technology news because that's the stuff that's really being built right under our noses. And while we're distracted about DACA or some of these other policies, which are important to some regard, with the illegal immigration issue and all that stuff, meanwhile we're building this enslavement system through the technology. So, kind of keeping tabs of that stuff. Also, just trying to provide another news outlet that's not super politically charged, because it seems to be every news channel is like that now. So that's all the
Good
stuff
stuff.
that I've been doing.
Well, good, man. Well, man, look, I love you as a brother in Christ. I do. I appreciate your work, man. It's so nice talking to you. So let's do it again sometime, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Sounds good. And we're gonna have you on the podcast, and also my channel. The live stream on mine didn't really work today, but maybe we can flip the roles here. Maybe you can jump on a live stream on the Face Like the Sun channel.
Cool. It'd be a pleasure. Let me know, man. And, good luck with the fam and everything and with your work. And just take care and hit me up. You know how to find me. We're on Facebook together, and I'll talk to you later, okay?
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
You too, buddy. Take
All right,
care.
bye.
Bye. All right, I'm going to jump over here to the chat now. Man, what a pleasure. It was really nice meeting Gons finally. It was really nice having a chance to talk with him. And hope you guys like that as well. He's awesome. Like I said, if you guys aren't familiar with him, please check out his YouTube and Canary Cry Radio as well. Just for a little bit before we go, Jacob's here. Nice to see you, Jacob Israel. Gosh, so many people, so little time. I saw Nicholson was in the house earlier. Always a pleasure. Nicholson's a very good friend, and I need to talk to you again too. We should actually chat on the phone sometime. Guys, hey, thanks again for taking some time out of your day and listening to us. I hope you appreciated it. Hope you liked it. Lindsay's here. Nice to see you. Emma was here, I saw. Thanks again for my wonderful mods. I appreciate you. Oh, K Small's here too. Good to see you. So, guys, just thanks again, all of you, man. I appreciate you. You're the best. This is the part where I usually start rambling on about how much I like you guys, but I really do. You're the fam. You're my spiritual family. So anyway, without further ado, I'll let you go. I've got more videos coming up. Please check out my website, who is KJ Osborne, OZBORNE.com. Always putting up stuff there that I can no longer put on YouTube. So please check that out. You guys all take care of yourselves. Stay blessed, and I'll be doing more shows here very soon, okay? So take care, and I'll talk to you later.